If you are interested in wanting to know 5 titles that I'm investing in for 2021 that are not Marvel or DC, stay tuned. Hi, I'm Mikey, and this is Comics by the Cover. If you're new to the channel, I first want to say thank you. I appreciate you being able to find me through the algorithm. And if you're returning to the channel, I just want to say thank you. You're super awesome. And if you're new again to the channel, I do encourage you, if you like this video and you find it entertaining, if you find it informative, if you find it useful, please feel free to hit that subscribe button, and you too can join the super awesome list of subscribers that are following me currently. If you feel that you don't want to subscribe, that's fine as well. Your choice. In this video, what we're going to be looking at is 5 books that I'm currently invested in for 2021 that are not Marvel or DC. And the reason why I decided I wanted to kind of get this list started was because you oftentimes see on these top 10 lists these random independent titles that just jump on the list, and you're like, where did that book come from? And and when I'm out here and I look around and I see a lot of other lists, and I see a lot of Marvel MCU related lists and occasionally some DC lists, but mostly it's a lot of Marvel. So I wanted to kind of provide an option out there that is not those, so not DC, not Marvel, not one of the big two, because I feel like there's an opportunity to really target some of these independent lists. And even though most of these are, I think pretty much all of these are image or image or related type titles, I think it'll be helpful for you in the long run. So coming in at number 5 on the list is the 2018 hit Skyward by Joe Henderson and Lee Garbett. This book is about a character by the name of Willa Fowler, who lives in this world where gravity is like low. It's low gravity now, so people can jump higher than normal and achieve things that they wouldn't be able to do in regular gravity environment. Well, Willa was born after this G-Day event, which caused the low gravity moment, and you know, her, like many other young people, this is the life that they've always known. Well, the story goes on that some people are set out to change this world, and that's kind of where the story kind of develops from there. But this was a very well-received book back in 2018, and Sony quickly secured the rights to this film at that moment. Up until now, you really haven't heard much about this book or this series, and then recently I did notice that Jim Lee had posted a picture where he had did a commission, well, not commission sketch, but a charity sketch for Joe Henderson, who is one of the writers and producers for this film. If you're not familiar with Joe Henderson, some of the things that he's been associated with were things like Lucifer and so forth. This book has a couple covers that are of interest for issue number 1. There's the main cover, which you can see here. Now, this book typically goes for about only $5 raw, so it's a very super affordable book. I think the high on this book was around $20. There's also the jock variant, which is this one right here, and that goes for around $15 raw with a high of about $30. This book mostly sold upon the first announcement in 2018, and with some of the stuff, you know, kind of dying down regarding COVID and restrictions and so forth as we move forward into 2021, I would expect that you would probably see some more of this. The fact that there was the charity sketch, you know, to help support comic shops for Joe Henderson, you know, it's definitely something that shows that this is a story that is still very top of mind. And I wouldn't be surprised, like I said, it's been a couple years now, that we may hear a story break on this, which may cause this book to have a sudden spike. So that's why I have this on the list, because one, it's super affordable, and it's at a very good low to buy in right now to potentially get this book. So that's why I personally acquired this book and had it on my 2021 list for books that I am speculating on that are not Marvel and DC. This book has a 9.8, can usually average around $75 to $100, and during the peak in 2018, it actually hit a high of about $175. And if you think about the recent boom in collector's market for the comic books and so forth, a lot of it has occurred in the past, I would say mid 2019 to 2020. So that 175 high might be, conservatively low with the new interest that you're finding in the comic book industry in 2020 and 2021. The jock variant at a 9.8 usually averages around $100 to $120. And the interesting thing about this book is currently there's less than 30 books on the CGC census at a 9.8 on this, which means if this book does take a big hit and it either a trailer drop or news drops, the spike in 9/8 may drastically increase because there are lower copies on census, because there wouldn't be a lot of supply out there and demand may go up, which may cause the limited supply of 9/8 to drastically increase above that 175. So I wouldn't be surprised if news drops on this sometime this year, and this, or even next year potentially, and this book greatly increases above that 175 mark. I would not be surprised to see a 9/8 of this hit anywhere as high as 225 to even 250. So again, that's why I have this book on my list at number 5. Coming in at number 4, and actually for the remainder of this list, these are all tied to Mark Millar universe in the Netflix. The thing is, in 2017, if I recall, Netflix bought out Mark Millar's world of comic books. Some of those books that you may be familiar with might be like Wanted, Kingsman, Hit Girl. So there's several other books that we're going to mention on this list that will be basically his books. And these are all books that I've been targeting recently because they are in a lull. And when COVID hit, all this production, for the most part, stopped. And this next book in particular, coming in at number 4, is the 2018 Magic Order. This book had started production and was going to be one of the starting series that was going to be produced for the Mark Millar universe. This course is, of course, by Mike Miller and Olivier Coipel. The way that this book is described is, this is Sopranos meets Harry Potter, was what I've pretty much read that this book's been described as. But basically, it's a group of wizard families that have been kind of hiding within society, and eventually one of them gets picked off. One of them gets murdered. And so that starts this thing about someone taking them out one by one. And the families are set to try to, solve these mysteries and find out who's at the source of all this this melee that they're experiencing in their families. So again, this book had started production and was held up in October of 2020. So you haven't seen anything since then because they pretty much halted everything due to COVID concerns, and they didn't particularly like the direction that the film or series was heading. But they are still very, very much interested in this. This is why this is at number 4 for me, because it did stop production, but I believe there was production that was already being made, which means there might be footage and so forth that's already made, which means that they don't probably want to waste that, and they may take that and do re-edits and bring in a new director or new actors to kind of finish off this project. I think one of the driving factors will be dependent upon what happens with number 1 on the list, and we'll get there momentarily. But the other thing about this book is they're outside of the regular cover A, there are 2 notable exclusive covers which were con exclusive. One was for the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, as well as the C2E2 exclusive. Both these covers, generally go for around $5 to $10. So it's again a very super affordable book if it's something that you're interested in. And CGC books go well lower than $100. So you can definitely pick this book up as a 9.8 for a very cheap price. I will mention though that the San Diego Comic-Con copy actually spiked as high as $170 during the hype of this book in 2018. And there are quite a bit of these books currently on census, so it's definitely not one that I would probably rush out to get a 9.8 of it, because there are going to be quite a bit of those on market, but definitely a good opportunity to get into a raw copy of this book. Again, my recommendations being the cover A, the San Diego Comic-Con, or the C2E2 covers as being my preferred choices. Again, those are typically going for around $10 or less, so they should be really easy to find. I wouldn't be surprised if you can actually find this book in your shop as well. Coming in at number 3 on the list is, again, another Mark Millar story. This is Prodigy. Prodigy is, again, a Mark Millar story with art by Raphael Albuquerque, who, by the way, I love his artwork. But it's about a gentleman by the name of Edison Crane, who is the world's smartest man. Not only is the world's smartest man, he's the world's most accomplished man. Like, he can do everything. He exceeds in sports, he exceeds in science, he exceeds in pretty much everything that he does. And as a result of his success, he's become basically bored. So governments, when they are faced with problems or things they can't solve, who do they call? they call Edison Crane to come in and solve the problem for them. So this is definitely a James Bond-esque type storyline. And the story goes that Netflix actually commissioned this book to be a series. So it's not a situation where the book existed and then they liked the book and then they wanted to make a series of it. It's kind of the same lines of how in the 80s where they wanted to sell He-Man toys, so they created a comic book to sell the toys. Well, this is the same concept. They created a comic book first with intent of doing a series or a movie based off of this character. The other thing about this book is it's rumored to have Michael B. Jordan associated with the potential casting for this main character. It had a couple spikes when this book first came out, or when the announcement was first done. The first one was in 2018 when the book was first announced. That caused the first spike, and then it had another spike last year in 2020 when they announced that this was definitely going to be a movie adaptation versus a series. But I think everything I recall is that it may actually be both, this TV series and a movie, but definitely is greenlit for both of them. And like I said, Netflix is already invested into this project. The good thing about this book, it has average raw sales of about $10, so it's a very, very affordable book. And currently, there's only 12 graded books on census for this cover A, with 10 of them being 9.8. If you look at the overall covers, there's not very many graded copies of this book on census. So with less than 50 of these books currently on census of all the covers A's that exist, this is another situation where if this book really spikes, does get gets either a trailer or some additional news for it. One of those ones where 9.8s may become scarce on the market, which may cause the 9.8s to fluctuate much higher than normal because of the low supply compared to the potential demand of this book. Again, this was in 2018, so again, this is prior to I believe where a lot of new investors and new comic book people started coming into the market, say around 2019, 2020, because personally I feel like there's been a big influx in the past couple of years. The really cool thing about this one as well is I'm really a big fan of these connecting covers, which actually highlights a lot of the Millarverse characters on here. One of the ones that I also enjoy, which didn't quite make the list for me, was Huck. I think that's another one that could be a potential one to add to this list, but currently I did leave it off of my current list. Coming in at number 2 on the list was 2016's Reborn. This book has seen the top 10 list a couple times, if I recall, but this is a Mark Millar and Greg Capullo book. So Greg Capullo does the art, Mark Millar, of course, does the writing on this. This book is about what happens after we die. It helps try to answer that question. Where do you go when you die? And in this particular story, the answer is to a fantasy land by the name of Adestria, I guess it's called, pronounced Adestria. And the main character, Bonnie Black, is an 80-year-old lady who passes away after she's lost most of her family, and it has this incredible. I think this scene from the book is like one of my favorites. All of her memories kind of come crashing down, and she's reborn into this fantasy world where I don't want to give any spoilers away, where she meets people from her past who had already passed away. And this book, when you read, this is actually a really great series. I highly recommend it. But it comes in running. Like, this book is supercharged in the beginning. It has a lot of high action right in the front, and the first issue is just going to drop you off on a to be continued, where it's going to make you want to flip over to that next issue. And like I said, Greg Capullo does a fantastic work with the art, so that's another fantastic selling point for this book. But anyways, so this character kind of, like I said, she goes on this journey through this world to try to attempt to find her husband. And again, it's this whole fantasy world filled with like dragons and all these and magic and all this other kind of really cool stuff. I really do recommend reading this book, even if it does nothing this year. I do recommend that it's something that you may want to pick up just for a fantastic read. But the last reported information on this was in August in 2020, and that did cause the book to have a spike during that time frame. There's a lot of major players, I would say, in this production. People that are interested in getting this book to screen are people such as Sandra Bullock. There's also interest from Chris McKay, from the Lego movies. So you're definitely seeing a lot of interest in wanting to bring this story to screen, and I welcome it. Like, I think it would just be so good, so fantastic. There's several variants for this book. Outside of the regular cover A, you're looking at the potential of getting the Jock variant, which I think is just a really super cool cover, and maybe something of interest for people because it is a cool cover. But of course, the most important of these variants would be the Todd McFarlane variant. This book is a 1 in 25 ratio variant, so it's already going to have some natural scarcity to it because it is a 1 in 25 ratio. It does go for a little bit higher than the regular books. The regular cover A is going to run you around $10. While these ratio variants, the Jock one will be around $10 as well, $10 to $15, and then the Todd McFarlane one is going to be running you around $60 to $75, I would say, online. The highest this book had ever hit in a 9.8 for the regular variant was around $63. Is that, yeah, the Jock variant hit around $10 or $15. The McFarlane one is a 1 in 25 ratio. It had an average price around $75. Actually, a 9.8 hit that for $169 in August of 2020 when this book hit. There are about 200 of the 1 in 25 on census, so like I said, it's not a lot comparatively to other books, with about 800 total books on census for CGC census. So again, you will see some of these 9.8s hit the market, but it is a great opportunity to get in some of the raw ones, which I think will be a good investment going into 2021. Again, I really recommend this book. That's why I have it in at number 2 on my list. Finally, coming in at number 1 on the list is Jupiter's Legacy. This is the 2013 series when it came out. Again, this is again by Mark Millar and Frank Quietly. This book explores kind of the generational gap between older superheroes that discovered their powers in the 1930s and their children today. And it kind of deals with some of the problems, and it's kind of what's called Jupiter's Legacy. It's about the children kind of living up to their parents' legacy and so forth. This book is very well received. You know, it has a lot of accolades around this book. And it did spawn a spin-off as well, Jupiter's Circle, as another option that you may want to consider picking up if you are interested in getting this book. This book was announced in 2015 for its initial production, and then it kind of went quiet for a little while. And then in 2020, it went under the radar, and it actually finished production and wrapped in 2020 for the filming of the first 8 episodes. So as I was digging into this, I went on Mark Millar's Twitter, and he actually is hyping this coming up real soon. So that made me dig deeper into this, and this actually is, there's an announcement that he is going to be making at IGN FanFest at the end of this month, so February 27, 2020. February 27, 2020, he'll be making an announcement on this, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get a trailer. And the reason why I think that we'll probably get a trailer for this is because I went in my Google search and I noticed that Netflix has already dropped a title card for this, a blank title card for this series, which means this is imminent. This is a situation where this book will probably be getting a trailer soon, and typically books hit their highest spike when a trailer drops. So this is an opportunity to really get in on this book at a really cheap price. Again, this is another book that's going to run you around $10. So super affordable book. It's going to have a lot of your first appearances in here on this first issue as well, these characters. I wouldn't be surprised if, and there's not a lot of sales data, mind you, on this book either. Because, like I said, this book has pretty much went quiet after the first initial announcements and the acquisition of the Miller universe from Netflix. So you don't have a lot of sales data that I found on this book, but just kind of put this in perspective of, like, say, like something like Umbrella Academy, which we know it already got produced with Netflix. This book may potentially hit highs, around the $65 to $70 for raw books. If this is a hit, and you may even get the graded books hitting as high as $150. Again, this is based off of some of the pricing that you see with the Umbrella Academy story and books. A couple notable things for this book is the highest CGC recorded book was around $80, and there are a few variants that I want to bring in mind. The first would be the Christian Ward variant. This book right here is, again, very affordable. You can get these books for around $10. There's also the Forbidden Planet variant. This one's going to run you a little bit more, around $30, so it might be a more favorable cover for some people. Though I think the covers to really be on the lookout for would be the sketch variant. This book has sold pretty solidly for price wise, and then there is a low count second print of this book as well that does exist, and that second print only has 5 recorded copies of 9.8s on the census. So that second print one may be something of interest because there is a gained popularity in latter print books, and especially with this having a variant cover or so a different cover than the cover A for the first print, you know, and not just in the recoloring and so forth. So you may see a spike on that second print as being a preferred one. Again, you can get these 9/8 for well under $100, so they're super affordable keys. And again, if this trailer does drop at the end of the month, I would not be surprised to see this book end up on a list and see a spike for this book because, you know, trailers tend to really run the prices of books. So with that said, that is my top 5 books of 2021 that I have invested in that are not Marvel or DC. Again, I personally put money on all these books because, one, they're just really cheap. Some of these books you can probably again find at your LCS, but most of these books can be grabbed online for less than $10. And I always say the best spec is cheap spec. So if you can get it at a cheap price, you know, why not? And you see it all the time. When it comes down to some of these independent titles and stories, like these books will hit the list and then they start trending, and then next thing you know, you have books that are far worse than these 5 hit prices in that $30-$40 range. And you know, and like I said, when you look at books like Cover recently, or Into the Dark, or Forever Maps, or several other of these independent books, you know, they're hitting prices that are, you know, higher than what you would typically expect. You know, bear that in mind. Like I said, you always buy with caution. When you look at any speculation, it's always a matter of buyer beware. Buy what you like. You know, if you're happy with it, then you won't be disappointed with it. But I will say the one good thing about investing in comic books is as long as you have the asset, you know, you always have the asset. So you want to buy at the right times. Typically, the best times to buy a book is when you're in these lulls, these dips before news is announced. And like I said, these storylines are all been pretty dead for about 2 or 3 years, which, if you think about a lot of the productions and movies and things like that, you usually go from announcement to castings to directors and then production and so forth. And those processes can usually take about 2 to 3 years. So, you know, all these are very anticipated projects with Netflix or with Sony. And it would not be surprising, like I said, if some time throughout this year that one of these 5 books get an announcement. Of course, the most obvious being the #1 on the list, Jupiter's Legacy, which looks like the most imminent book right now, I would say. So with that said, as always, I appreciate you watching the video. Appreciate you washing your hands too. I appreciate you watching the video, but you're super awesome. Thanks again. If you again like the video, feel free to hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up. Appreciate it greatly, and bye!